It is 6:40 on a Saturday morning. The bleach bottle is already open on the lip of the tub, the gloves are on, and the thin black line along the grout has come back. 3 days after the last time it was scrubbed out of existence. The renovation was supposed to be the end of this. What actually ends it costs about $5, takes roughly 90 seconds a day, and in most homes prevents more mold and soap scum than a $12,000 remodel ever does. The Japanese household has run on that arithmetic for 2 generations. The reason it never crossed the Pacific has very little to do with plumbing, and almost everything to do with which solutions are profitable enough to keep selling. The principle this is Oracle Prime. What follows is a list of 16 things absent from the ordinary Japanese bathroom, but the list is not really about Japan. It is about one piece of building science the cleaning products economy has no reason to teach. Mold, soap scum, and the sour smell people blame on an old bathroom are not dirt. They are water and time. Mold spores are already present on every surface in every home, dormant and harmless, until a film of liquid water sits on a surface long enough for them to germinate. The United States Environmental Protection Agency puts that window at 24 to 48 hours. Dry a wet surface inside it, and in most cases, nothing grows at all. Soap scum obeys a parallel rule of chemistry. Remove the water before either clock finishes, and the bathroom stays clean without a war being fought in it. Everything Japanese design excludes is, underneath, a way of resetting those clocks to zero. Here is the part that rarely gets said out loud. No one can patent the act of wiping water off a wall. A squeegee lasts 10 years and sells no refills. There is no recurring revenue in prevention, which is precisely why prevention has no marketing budget, no dedicated aisle, and no advertising. The money lives in the cure, the mold sprays, the grout whiteners, the replacement caulk, the antimicrobial liners, the remodel itself. A solution stays alive in public awareness when someone profits each time it is repeated. The cheapest and most effective ones tend to go quiet. Keep that filter in mind through all 16. Every absence below is either a way to shorten the time water sits, or a place where the profitable answer replaced the working one. 1. The combined toilet and bath chamber. In most Western homes, the toilet sits about 3 feet from the sink and the shower, all sealed inside one humid box. In 2022, engineers at the University of Colorado Boulder used sheets of laser light to photograph what happens at the moment of a flush, publishing the first direct images of the aerosol plume in the journal Scientific Reports. The plume from a lidless bowl can rise around 5 feet into the air, carrying particles across every open surface in the room, toothbrush included. The phenomenon had been suspected for 60 years. The cameras simply made it undeniable. Worse, the bowl water stays loaded with pathogens for dozens of flushes after a single contaminated one. So the plume is not a one-time accident, but a standing condition of any open, shared bowl. Japanese floor plans refuse the premise. The toilet lives in its own small dry room. The toier, physically separated from the bathing space, the yokushitsu, so the two wettest and dirtiest functions of a home never share air. Where a single room is unavoidable, closing the lid before the flush contains most of the spray. A fix that costs nothing and is almost never mentioned. 2. Porous grout lines. Tile looks permanent, but the cementitious grout between the pieces is a sponge. Its micropores hold water, soap film, and organic dust. The exact starter kit for the black mold that forces the weekend bleach ritual. Japanese wet rooms often abandon tile entirely in favor of the unit bath. A prefabricated module whose floor, walls, and ceiling are molded from one continuous waterproof shell, with no seam anywhere for water to enter. Toto developed it under deadline pressure for the 1,000-plus rooms of Tokyo's Hotel New Otani ahead of the 1964 Olympics. Boxes built in a factory and lowered into place by crane in a matter of hours. Where a tiled bathroom took a crew the better part of a month, there is almost no pore for a spore to root in, and almost no seam for mold to hide behind. The surface sheds water in a sheet and dries in minutes. It barely spread in the United States, and the reason is structural rather than technical. American construction divides waterproofing, mortar, tiling, and plumbing among separate trades, so a single prefabricated box that does all four at once has no slot in the system that builds bathrooms. Meanwhile, the entire aftermarket in regrouting, resealing, and grout whitening pens exists only because the porous surface was chosen first. A seamless wall needs none of it, which is also why no one profits from recommending one. 3. Flat, undrained floors. Step into a typical Western shower pan and water collects in the corners, then sits. Standing water is residence time made visible, and residence time is the only thing mold actually needs. A Japanese bathing floor is engineered to slope toward a high-capacity central drain, so water that lands anywhere follows gravity to one point and is gone in seconds. The surface is dry again long before the 24-hour clock can even start. The EPA's own mold guidance is blunt about the lever. Increasing air circulation and temperature simply speeds drying, and a surface dried fast enough never enters the window where anything can establish. The difference between a floor that drains and one that pools is a matter of design, not money. A few degrees of slope, decided once and built in. 4. Fabric bath mats. A plush fabric mat steps out of the shower wet and in an unventilated room stays wet. Slow-drying fabric against a humid floor is a reservoir, not a solution. It grows odor and bacteria precisely because it never finishes drying. The Japanese replacement is a slab of kisodo, diatomaceous earth, a porous sedimentary stone made of fossilized algae. Its nanopores pull water in by capillary action and release it by evaporation. One independent test measured it absorbing 2.3 times its own weight in water within 30 seconds against 0.8 for cotton and going dry again in about a minute. This is the honest exception in the list. The better tool did get commercialized, sold today for $20 to $40, because someone found a way to package it as an object. The principle still holds. A mat that dries itself never needs a wash cycle, and the thing that needed laundering to stop smelling was the problem, not the fix. The economics only flipped because the stone could be sold as an object on a shelf. The same logic that buried the squeegee is what finally put a price tag on a porous rock. 5. Fabric and vinyl shower curtains. A plastic liner is colonized by mold within weeks, and a fabric curtain hung to hide that liner only adds more damp folds for water to cling to. A liner is a reservoir by geometry. Each fold holds water against itself for hours, exactly the residence time a flat pane denies. A fully waterproofed wet room offers nothing to hang and nothing to replace. Where a curtain cannot be avoided, a single pane of glass does the same job with no fabric and no folds, and it answers to chemistry. The cloudy film on glass is lime soap. A mild acid breaks it down on contact, while the thin water film behind it wipes away before it can dry and bond. The curtain is a consumable sold on a replacement cycle. The glass is bought once. 6. Countertops buried under products. A counter buried under bottles is not a storage problem. It is a maintenance multiplier. Every container is a separate object to lift, wipe under, and set back down, which is why a crowded surface never actually gets cleaned. The bottles just get pushed in circles. Japanese bathrooms lean on recessed and enclosed storage, leaving the working surface clear after every use. A clear surface is wiped in a single pass. The arithmetic is unsentimental. Each item left on the counter costs a few seconds every single day, indefinitely. A Japanese vanity is built to be wiped to the wall in one stroke, because a surface is only ever as clean as the part of it a hand can still reach. 7. Open shelving units. Open shelves above the toilet photograph well and perform badly. In a room that swings humid twice a day, an exposed shelf collects sticky dust and traps moisture around whatever sits on it. Japanese storage is enclosed behind doors, so dust stays out and clutter stays out of sight. A shelf with a door is functional storage. A shelf without one is a display case that has to be dusted. The difference is, again, decided once and paid for daily. The blog sells the look. The homeowner pays the dusting. 8. The hoard of expired cosmetics, the cabinet in most homes, is an archive of unfinished decisions. Oxidized serums, the shampoo from a hotel 2 years ago, the lotion bought for a problem that resolved itself. Japanese households treat the cabinet as working storage rather than memory, periodically clearing whatever has not earned its place. The point is not minimalism for its own sake. Stored product is stored, moisture-trapping clutter, and every kept item is a small daily tax on the one resource the room is short of: dry, clear space. The shelf does not remember the money already spent. It only adds to the surface that has to be kept dry. 9. Excess decorative towels. A bar layered with 2 bath towels, a hand towel, and a washcloth keeps none of them dry. Stacked fabric in humid air is a slow reservoir. The decorative guest towel is stranger still, a textile that exists to be looked at, washed not because it is dirty but because it gathers damp dust on the rack. Japanese bathrooms keep only the towels in active use and store the rest in a dry closet outside the humid zone, so the spare linen is not quietly absorbing the room. A towel is a tool for drying, not an exhibit. 10. Scented plug-ins and odor masking. A bathroom that needs a synthetic ocean breeze to be tolerable is broadcasting a signal, and the plug-in is there to silence it. The human nose evolved to read decay. A persistent musty smell is information about moisture, a hidden leak, or a colony already established. Japanese bathrooms remove the cause instead of masking it, running timed mechanical ventilation that pulls humid air out within minutes and holds relative humidity below the level at which mold can activate. The air freshener is, structurally, a perfect product. It sells again and again, precisely because it never fixes anything. The fix, a fan on a timer, is bought once and forgotten. A nose is a smoke detector. Sealing its mouth does not put out the fire. 11. The weekly chemical deep clean. Once a week, out come the bleach, the gloves, and the stiff brush for an hour of scrubbing hardened scum and rooted mold. The Japanese bathroom is cleaned daily and almost never deep cleaned because nothing is ever allowed to harden. A pass with a squeegee, a wipe of the basin, 30 seconds on the toilet. Under 2 minutes, no chemicals, because the scum never sets and the mold never roots. The molecular picture is worth seeing. Soap scum is not dirt at all, it is lime soap. When the sodium stearate in ordinary soap meets the calcium and magnesium ions dissolved in hard water, the two react and precipitate as insoluble calcium and magnesium stearate, the gray film on the glass. While that film is still wet, it lifts off with almost no effort. Once the water evaporates, the salts crystallize and bond to the surface, and only acid or abrasion will move them after that. The squeegee wins by timing. Pulling the water off the wall removes the film while it is still soft, and removes the moisture before any spore can begin its 24-hour clock. Both problems are defeated in the same 90 seconds, before either one fully exists. The tool that does this was patented on the 24th of October, 1936, by Ettore Steccone, an Italian immigrant who washed windows in Oakland, California, and was a familiar sight around town on an Indian motorcycle with a ladder over one shoulder and a bucket swinging from the end. Tired of the heavy steel squeegee of the day, he built a light brass one with a single rubber blade and called it the New Deal. His patent describes the mechanism with engineering precision. Draw the rubber edge under pressure across a wet surface, and the liquid is trapped on the wet side of the blade and pulled away, leaving a dry surface in its trail. The word itself came off the decks of ships. To squeegee was to squeeze the water away. The blade was built to dry plate glass 40 stories up. It does exactly the same thing to a shower wall. This is what every hotel housekeeper still knows at the end of every shift, and what most households have quietly stopped doing. Somewhere in your own family line, someone wiped down a surface every evening without ever calling it a method. And somewhere in the last few decades, between the arrival of the spray bottle and the promise of the renovation, the habit was set down and never picked back up. At $5 and 10 years of service with no refill, the squeegee is uninvestable. The weekly bleach model sells a bottle a month, forever. Only one of those two has any reason to be advertised. Steccone himself nearly lost to that same gravity. The large suppliers turned his squeegee down as too small and too cheap to be worth carrying. And he broke through only by giving the tool away to working window cleaners until their demand forced the catalogs to stock it. The better answer did not win on merit. It won because one stubborn man routed around the people who profited from the worse one. 12. Toilet paper as the ultimate standard. Consider the logic plainly. A hand caked in mud is not made clean by a dry paper towel, yet for over a century the same dry paper approach has been accepted for the body. In Japan, water does the work. Toto shipped its first washlet in 1980. By a 2018 Cabinet Office survey, 80.2% of households with 2 or more people owned an electronic bidet seat, up from 14.2% in 1992, a fixture that began as a curiosity and became the national default. A warm stream cleans and far less paper is consumed. One manufacturer estimates a family of 4 eliminates more than 380 rolls a year. The structural point is sharp. Toilet paper is the ideal recurring product, used once, bought forever. A bidet attachment that starts around $40 and lasts for years quietly undercuts that entire model, which is exactly why the consumable, not the attachment, owns the Western shelf. The fixture also wins the only vote that matters. In Japanese surveys, almost no one who adopts a warm water seat says they would go back to paper alone. 13. Electric hand dryers, high-velocity warm air hand dryers are efficient at one thing the marketing tends to omit: aerosolizing residual droplets and pushing them out into the room's air. Long before any of that entered the conversation, Japan had simply opted out. Most public restrooms there stock neither paper towels nor dryers, and people carry a personal cloth handkerchief, a hankachi, tucked into a bag from childhood, to dry their own hands. It is a habit taught in primary school and kept for life. Schools still check that children carry one the way they check for a name tag, so the practice is installed before it is ever explained. A handkerchief is bought once and washed with the laundry. The paper towel and the dryer are perpetual costs, one in supplies and one in electricity, for a job a square of cotton already does. 14. Cold seats and unregulated faucets. At 2 in the morning in winter, a bare porcelain seat delivers a small shock, and a shower run by 2 separate knobs swings between scalding and freezing, while a half-asleep person gambles with the handles. None of it is a law of nature. The same electronic seats found in more than 80% of Japanese homes are gently heated, drawing only a few watts. A standby load small enough that the comfort was never really a luxury, just an engineering afterthought the West ought never bothered to import. Japanese taps commonly use a thermostatic mixing valve. A temperature is set once, say 38 degrees Celsius, and the valve holds it, locking out a scalding spike even if the cold supply suddenly drops. Western bathrooms spend freely finishes, and almost nothing on the functional hardware that would remove a daily jolt of thermal shock, because tile photographs well and a mixing valve does not. 15. Tank top soap applications. One detail rewards a close look. Many Japanese toilet tanks carry a small faucet on the lid. When the toilet is flushed, the clean water that will refill the tank first runs out of that spout, so hands can be rinsed in water that is about to be used anyway. It is quiet water conservation built directly into the plumbing. What is never placed beside that faucet is soap, and the reason is mechanical. Soap surfactants carried down into the tank attack the rubber flapper and seals over time, degrading the very valve that makes the flush work. So the rinse at the tank is plain water by design, and the soap stays at the basin. It is a small lesson respecting how the chemistry and the machine interact. 16. The myth of the expensive renovation. The most expensive mistake is the belief that a big enough renovation will finally fix the room. $12,000 of new tile and a larger vanity changes the finishes and nothing else. The floor still pools if it does not drain. The glass still films if the water is hard. And a larger counter only gives the clutter more room to spread. A bigger room does not shorten residence time or soften the water. The remodel is the highest margin item in the entire funnel, which is exactly why it is sold as the cure. And it is the option least likely to do the actual job, because what it sells is square footage and surfaces, not the 90-second habit that keeps either one clean. It is the one purchase that lets a person feel the problem is solved by having spent the most on it, which is the most dependable way to not solve it at all. Closing 16 absences, one principle. A Japanese bathroom is not cleaner because it is more expensive or more spiritual. It is cleaner because almost every choice in it shortens the time water spends sitting on a surface, and because the people in it spend 2 minutes a day instead of 1 grueling hour a week. The reason that approach faded from the Western bathroom is not mysterious. It cannot be patented, it has no champion, it generates no refill and no recurring revenue, so it was never advertised. And a louder, costlier model, better at making money, took its place. None of this required Japan to be wiser. It required only that the cheap habit had no salesman, and the expensive cure had thousands. That claim is testable, cheaply, by anyone, this week. Pick one surface, a single glass panel, or the one line of grout that always darkens first, and for 30 days pull the water off it within a minute of the last shower. And do nothing else. No bleach, no spray. Then watch one specific thing. The pink ring that often appears first is not mold at all but a bacterium, Serratia marcescens, feeding on soap residue. Kept dry, it has nothing to feed on and does not come back. Report back below whether the line stayed clean, how long it took, how hard your water runs. A few hundred of those notes turn this comment section into something the cleaning aisle does not have. A field record of what actually works, kept by the people living with the result. The next Saturday at 6:40, the bleach can stay in the cupboard, the gloves stay in the drawer, and the only thing resting on the lip of the tub is a $5 blade, already dry.